is Aeternum Radio, broadcasting from the peaks of Shattered Mountain to the New World.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Aeternum Radio. I am your host, Slacker, here joined by my two co-hosts, Ruko.
Hey everybody.
And BigPapa.
Howdy.
We have just finished an in-depth discussion and debate on whether or not Hawaiian pizza is considered pizza or not, and the consensus was it is not.
That's correct. Yeah,
that's not correct.
That was the consensus.
We had one listener pipe in and agreed with me that pineapple pizza, that Hawaiian pizza
been
is
kicked
excellent.
From the Discord and removed from our lives. So.
No.
If you want to participate, if you want to join in on the conversation in our pre-show or in our post-show, you can join us here in Discord where we record our episodes. Follow us on Twitch at the Slacker Project, or follow us on Twitter where we'll post when we're going live, so you can be a part of our pre-show and post-show. So that's always a ton of fun. As we had talked about earlier, we were hoping to have Danny on the show today. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties on our end, and we weren't able to make that happen. But we do have plans to meet with him in the future after beta has released, because there's some really good topics we want to discuss with him, such as how communities who are bigger than 100 people are going to be working together with their companies. You know, a company can only contain 100 individuals. What if your community is more than 100 people? Do you feel limited? There's a lot of cool stuff we want to talk about come post-beta, and we'll discuss that with him in a later episode. So we're still super excited to have him on the show. He will be coming soon, just not today. Check out his content on YouTube. He puts out some really great stuff. Oh, and he streams on Twitch pretty regularly as well. So let's go over a brief overview of today's topics. We'll start off with our news. There's some good stuff that has been happening there that New World has announced. Then we'll dive into our feature review, which will consist of instanced PvP combat. So we want to talk about all that PvP combat that happens not in the world PvP, but in a very kind of controlled environment. And those come in two forms: territory wars and outpost rush. So we're going to talk about both of those and what it's like to play in them, whether we're excited about them, what we're worried about. Then we'll do a small lore dive and talk a little bit about Azoth or Azoth. I've heard it pronounced several different ways. We'll call it Azoth from here on out. And the Corrupted. How are these related? What could this mean for the future of Aeternum? We'll dive a little bit into that. And finally end it with our opinion segment. After we've had the good feature review about instance PvP combat, let's talk about what makes good PvP content. Is it better in an instance, or is it better in the open world? How do those, what makes the PvP content immersive versus just a reward grind? And we'll get into all that later today. But let's start off with the New World news. Alpha has officially ended. We await the beta with bated breath. This is actually our last recording before everyone gets to play in the beta who has pre-ordered. If you haven't pre-ordered, or you're not sure you want to pre-order because you don't like pre-ordering stuff, which is absolutely a good stand to have, you can still sign up on the New World's website to request to be a part of the beta, but pre-purchasing does solidify your position in the closed beta. Closed beta, right? You just got to buy the game and you'll get in. That starts on the 20th. We are less than a week away at the time of this episode going live. I'm really excited for it. Next episode we're going to be talking about our first reactions and actually talk about the content and how we feel about the gameplay. Tell me you guys are looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, definitely looking forward to it. It'll be nice to actually get in the game instead of just watching footage and answer a lot of the questions I still have about the game. And take a look at my weapon build and see how well it destroys BigPapa's weapon build. So that'll be fun.
I was just going to say I can't wait to, continuously evade Ruko with my rapier build. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
In an interesting note, the New World recently posted that the game director Scott Lane on July 20th at 9 a.m. And if I remember correctly, the beta servers are going to go live at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, that's correct.
So they'll be doing their first developer live stream for the first time ever. This will be the first time we'll see the developers have their hands on. It'll be half an hour before the rest of us get to jump in, and we all crash the servers. So during this live stream, they are going to announce the updates and changes that they've made to New World and what we can expect in the closed beta. So it does look like they've put in another round of changes, and we'll see how drastic they are. My initial reaction was I thought there'll be very subtle changes, bug fixes and whatnot. Ruko, you think they might add some more content here?
I hope so. I don't expect like a new weapon, but maybe some tweaks to maybe the PvP combat that we're going to talk today. I think a lot of it's just going to be feedback they got from the alpha and the changes they could actually make in the few weeks since the alpha has ended. So we'll see. I'm not expecting anything massive or anything like that, but hopefully some tuning and some maybe a few new things here and there.
I think that would be great. Okay, so finally, we have an announcement kind of more on our side. So just to clear things up, if you're interested in playing with us, we're going to be picking a server that we'll be playing on. We'll announce that in our Discord. If you want to play in our company, certainly go over and join our Discord because that's where we're going to be gathering people together and playing. But this Discord server is also primarily for this podcast, which is not necessarily directly tied to the company, sort of like a sidestep. But if you want to get involved, you can. And what we did is we did a vote to see which faction we should join, and BigPapa's got some staggering results for us.
Yes. After we did a vote for which faction our viewers wanted us to play during the beta specifically. And it turns out that we're going to be playing the Syndicate.
Yay! Syndicate!
Wrong. That's not even true.
No,
true.
I'm pretty sure that's what it said.
We added a couple votes last night while you weren't looking. So
okay, no, all right. It was real close, but we're going to be playing as the Marauders during the beta.
When he says real close, we're talking like 1 or 2 votes.
Yeah, it was quite close.
It was neck and neck.
I was surprised.
I was
Covenant
surprised
got a
too.
vote at one point.
I talked to some people as well, and they said, "Yeah, Syndicate all the way." And then suddenly out of nowhere, Marauders sneak up, and
out of nowhere.
I think people are just trolling us. I think that's what is going on. But
no, well, so like I said earlier, we're gonna have some Syndicate secret operatives, amongst the company.
That's right.
Who will rise up before launch, and
we'll undermine the Marauders from within.
Because we will do it again before launch, just so you know. We're going to be doing another vote.
Yeah.
It'll heavily depend on what other factions are popular on the server we're playing on. We'll take that into account during the next vote. But yeah, we're looking forward to playing as Marauders, at least during the beta. And I'm looking forward to playing as Syndicate at launch.
So I think we mentioned before, and I just want to emphasize this. Like, I'm super excited to play Marauders. I think they have the best aesthetics and all that kind of stuff. But one, we're going to see how this actually plays in the game. And two, I actually would rather play the underdog faction than the dominant faction. So if Marauders ends up being like covering the entire map of Aeternum during the beta in green, then I'm going to be like, okay, let's go Syndicate, because I want to fight for our ground and have to. I like that play more than I like being like, we're the dominant, we control everything, and you can't do anything about it. I like being the underdog. I like that fight back.
And I'm fairly certain, after launch, let's say we choose a faction and it turns out that it becomes the most dominant faction, I'm sure our company would heavily consider switching. But that's to come.
I think so
that
too,
was
yeah.
something we discussed, but that's something we would probably be interested in.
That's 120 days after launch, which reminds me, when this launches on the 20th, if you want to be involved with us, be sure that you're plugged in to our Discord, because it will be telling you what server we'll be on, what the name of the company will be, and we'll all get formed, because that opening little bit is going to kind of be a mad dash, and we want to make sure that everyone gets an invite that wants to get one. So I think we're good there. Yes?
Yep.
So let's talk about when beta releases, right? The entire of Aeternum is completely up for grabs. And you and your mates are going to run out there and you're going to get as much cash as you can, as fast as you can, give it all to one person who's going to turn it in you'll form your company. Companies are very easy to form. And then you'll give it to one man, and that man will or gal, and she'll turn it in to claim a territory. Once a territory has been purchased with gold, a good amount of gold, it then can only be taken by combat, right? Everything after that becomes a territory war. So at the very beginning, it's a mad dash to get the territories. After that, it's game on, right? It's territory wars, it's wrestling for control, and so on. So,
I just thought, I wonder. Well, okay, two thoughts here, real quick. One, I wonder how expensive it's going to be to purchase a territory. I'm sure they want it to be somewhat realistic for new players to buy it because they want people to start controlling territories early on. But it would be sick if you could actually purchase territory later on from another faction, because I don't know how realistic that is. It's not like this is a completely player-driven economy. Right, yeah, it's not like this is EVE, but that would be sick if you could purchase territory instead of go to war. But maybe it's not realistic. It just was a thought I had, because after launch, that's not going to matter anymore. It's just for the launch, purchasing the initial territories.
The launch, and maybe patch 1.5 is a patch where they open up 2 new territories, and suddenly it's a mad dash for those 2 territories.
Oh, fair enough.
So it won't be, that system will be used in the future. I like that. I like the idea that I could sell off the territory if I was done with it, because when you own a territory, it's actually fairly expensive to maintain it. You've got to pay a weekly upgrade fee, or else the crafting stations inside your town start to downgrade. And if you're at max level, you want those crafting stations to be as high as they can, so you can craft the top level gear and hopefully get really, really great stuff and sell it and make a ton of money.
So it would make sense then if there was some sort of potential option to sell and buy territories. Let's say your guild starts, people start leaving, you mismanaged your company, and you can't afford the territory. Instead of going through the whole war process, you could sell it. But then some factions, there might be some factions that miss out on having a chance at getting that territory, but they just go back and undermine it. That's the catch. Owns it.
I think that a ton of people are going to be fighting for the territories and putting them in conflict. So even if you were to sell it,
it'd still be in conflict.
Yeah, the conquest of the land of Aeternum, I think, is going to be very.
That'd be cool. I don't want to deal with this war. I don't want to deal with it. Someone else can deal with it. And they're like, yeah,
yeah.
Anyway, the Louisiana Purchase in New World. That's.
That would be pretty cool.
Sell off a third of the land
that's very
the other faction. There,
the syndicate.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that would be very cool. So throughout the game, just so we're clear, there are 2 different. Inside each territory, there is a settlement and there is a fort, and they're typically a good distance apart from each other. At that fort, when the corrupted attempts to take your fort, that's called an invasion, and that's like a PvE event that people can queue for. And when people overthrow your territory, that's called a territory war, and that's what we're talking about. So this is specifically a PvP, and other factions coming in to take it. So let's talk about, our goal today is to chat about the actual gameplay. What does this feel like? How does it play inside the combat? But let's just take a moment to talk about how you're getting there. So we've talked about this a little bit. I just want to brush on it one more time. When you want a territory, you're going to go do faction PvP missions in that territory to try and wrestle control for it. And there'll be these gauges for your specific faction. So we're playing Marauders for beta. Let's say we're going after a Covenant territory. Well, we'll have a bar that starts at 100%. It's in complete control by the Covenant. As we start to do PvP missions, we'll start to whittle that number down until it gets all the way down and it becomes in conflict. How the Covenant negate this is they do PvP missions and they shut down our PvP missions. They go to the places to defend their territory to make sure that we can't accomplish our goals. Because when you do a PvP mission, if you die once, you've failed all your PvP missions. So it's if they have someone out there who's doing some work trying to defend their territory, they'll be able to get some work done to delay the inevitable, right? But in time, that will whittle away. It'll then be in conflict, and our company can then declare war on this territory. Now, any company in our faction, once we've wrestled control, can declare war. And when you are, you're signed up for the war that will happen. And that territory war is going to happen at a specific time period that has been preset by the defender before you even declared war. So they may say, hey, you can declare war on this as the Covenant. The Covenant's here on this territory. They say, yeah, you can declare war on us, but you can only declare war... you can declare war on us, but you can only declare war between the hours of 8 to 9 p.m. Because that's when all of our people are online. And you kind of have to adjust for that if you're coming in. So once your faction has finally put them in conflict, you and anyone else in your faction can then declare war on them, and you'll be signed up for this war to take the territory, right? And whoever had contributed the most has the highest chance of being called the Vanguard. And the Vanguard will be the company who will take control once they've won the conflict. What this means is if you're in a company of 10, 15 people and there's a company of 100 people also with you, but you really want to take a territory and you did those PvP missions, there's still a chance that you become the Vanguard and you can take that territory for yourself. So everyone gets a shot at it. It's all about who had contributed the most gets a higher chance of being able to be a part of it. So you're attacking, you've got people together, and once you just said, hey, we're going to declare war, we've picked our time, or we're doing the time that the defender has decided, now it is opened up saying, hey, there's a 48-hour window, and I believe it's 48 hours. There's a set amount of time before this event happens. Start signing people up. And your company can sign up. You can hire mercenaries from the faction that's not involved with this territory war to come fight with you. So there's ways that you can participate in wars even if you have nothing to deal with it, just because you like the gameplay, which I think is fantastic. But ultimately, you'll sign up and 50 people will get to pick. And whoever the Vanguard is, they get to select out of everybody who signs up for this war who they want to group up into this instance thing. Groups of 5, boom, 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 until you have 50 people and you're ready to go, and the battle starts at 9 p.m. a few days from then, and you're ready to go. You start loading in, and invites go out.
Which I will say is, you mentioned how you can organize. You'll have this in-game menu option to organize all the players from your roster into their separate groups, and it looks fantastic. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you'd have to do that internally amongst your company, or through a Discord server or something beforehand. But now this makes it much easier if you have to accept a few mercenaries from outside your company or outside the neutral faction. You can organize them easily into groups and go from there. It looks really cool. I'm really excited to play around with that and see how that works.
Yeah, I'm glad that they have something in game, but my hope is still people will hop in a Discord or some sort of voice communication for that company so they can still coordinate their efforts during the actual war. I don't know. I feel like that would make it more fun, especially as you have people talking about strategies and what they're doing and how to counteract what the enemy is doing. And we'll talk about more of the tactics during the war, but I feel like whichever side is going to be the most coordinated is going to come out victorious here.
Oh, I agree. I was just going to say that I imagine the most competitive companies are going to be sending out their Discord links to any randos joining.
Absolutely. I know we will for sure.
We would probably do that because it's much better to be coordinated in a
Well, what I'm hoping to see is that, let's say in our company, we've only got 15 guys who can actually show up for the war. And so we're going to pug out the other 35 people who have signed up, right? And some of them are not max level, but whatever. We'll take any warm body that we can get and throw them in our war. I'm hoping that the 15 people that we have being coordinated is enough to make a difference with the other 35 complete chaotic people playing, right? Coordinated, I agree with you, though. Whoever's the most coordinated might be your winner. But let's talk about how you actually play this territory war. So, because it's a 50-on-50 conflict, that's a lot of people. That's going to be very difficult to organize. But essentially, what you have to do if you're the attacker is you have to break into the fort and capture its claim point, which is in the middle, in the walls behind the gates. And you have to do it in a set amount of time. To do this, when the game begins, you're going to have a war camp or a war armory, right? And that's going to be set back a ways. And the first thing you have to do is you have to rush up and you have to capture 3 different points, A, B, and C. Those 3 rally points have to be captured before you can break down the gates and charge in. Once you've captured them, then the gates will then be vulnerable. You can start to break the gates. Once you're inside, and I think there are 3 gates per fort, one on the northeast, kind of like one right ahead, one on the left, one on the right, kind of approach. Once you've broken down the gates, it's who can claim that center point. And it's a very cool effect where you've got musketmen and archers up on the battlements shooting down and, fireballs being thrown. So you have all this effect happening, people with these big warhammers slamming on the gates. It feels very epic, and very busy. So amidst all this, you as an individual are going to be earning, and you'll start the game with a cache of these, but you'll be earning something called battle tokens. And as the attacker and as the defender, you can spend your battle tokens at your armory, at the war camp, or in the fort to gain access to special potions, ammunition, and even siege weapons to help in your conflict. Now, the use of these siege weapons are going to be very important. When we talked about the coordinating your attack, coordinating when you're going to be deploying your siege weapons, I think, is going to be very paramount. Because if you suddenly deploy 10 different siege weapons, as opposed to being one siege weapon sporadically every 5 minutes, those 10 that get deployed at the exact same time, I think, are going to be far more effective. So what are those siege weapons? Well, as an attacker, you can get a cannon, which has like a medium rate of fire, does a high damage, is really good versus structures and taking out the defender's siege weapons. You have a fire launcher. It's this flaming projectile that bursts on impact and covers the area. Kind of looks like a motor. It's really good versus infantry and the ranged enemies who might be up on the ramparts. And a repeater, which fires, it's like a rapid fire turret, and it's ideal versus quick moving small targets like individuals that you want to kind of mow down. So that's what you get as the attacker. As defenders, you get almost the same things. They're a little bit different. You get a ballista, which is the defender's version of a cannon, really good at taking out the enemy's siege equipment. An explosive cannon that actually it disrupts and knocks back all enemies. It's really strong versus infantry. It's a great area of denial. A repeater, just as the defenders had, or attackers had. And you also get 2 unique ones as being defenders. You get a fire dropper. You get to pour like molten lava down off of your ramparts onto the gates below to kill anyone who's trying to like siege your gates. And you also get a Horn of Resilience, which is this healing defensive buff to allies, but it has a really long cooldown. Again, something you don't want some rando to just go blow the horn. You're like, we were saving that for our final push. Thanks a lot for ruining that. Both the attackers and defenders get access to Inferno Mines and Powder Kegs. Inferno Mines are a proximity mine that bursts and covers an area of fire, good area denial. And Powder Kegs, which, unlike Sea of Thieves, these won't detonate if they're destroyed early. They have a fuse that must be lit manually. It has a long duration before it goes off, but is the highest damage of any siege weapon. It's very powerful versus gates, but you've got to protect them. So, attackers, defenders, they're using their battle tokens to buy these siege equipments, to buy potions, ammo, whatever they need for this conflict, to push these rally points, break down the gates, and claim that post. If you're the Vanguard and you guys accomplished it, guess what? You get a bunch of points. You guys take over the territory. And now you're in charge of paying the taxes associated with that territory. But you also get to collect taxes, such as property taxes, trade taxes, all the different kinds of things that you now get to set. You're now in control, and you get that territory for at least 48 hours or until you lose control again. So that is the rush. And I think to go back to what you guys are talking about, there's a lot to coordinate here, right? Like, that's a lot that if you have a bunch of random people running around is not going to be nearly as effective as if you say, hey, group 1, you're on cannons. Group 2, you're on repeaters. We're going to drop at the exactly 5 minutes. Go. That's a big difference.
Oh, that's huge difference. I have trouble managing a 20-man group in PvE content where the same thing is going to happen over and over and over again, let alone 50 people in a PvP scenario that's ever changing. Like, it's going to be chaos. And so whichever side I think can coordinate their efforts better, whichever side can outflank the other one, or maybe pull off a sneak attack or something like that is going to be the victor here. They have a lot of really cool ideas. I like the siege weapons and things like that. I I'm hoping for more variety with these in the future. Like I'd love to see the attackers get something maybe like a battering ram or something like that, or just a few
that would be
few
awesome.
more things.
Yeah.
Just a few more things to keep it interesting, so you don't see the exact same tactics over and over again. Because the more you play it, people are going to realize some strategies are going to be better than other ones, and it could start to feel a bit monotonous. At
A
that
meta
point.
will evolve, start to evolve.
Yeah,
and
it absolutely could. So I think more options for attackers and defenders will help keep it keep it interesting, keep it fresh, and I don't know exactly how the battle tokens are accumulated over time, but I if you have to spend them, I think that should hopefully help make some meaningful choices on trying to counterplay what the enemy team is doing.
Right.
So, and that just means more options will create more counterplay opportunities. So,
well, that's what I was thinking, is just more choices for the players in general in this type of war, in this type of instance PvP. I think will be better. I would even like to see. You have to capture all 3 points, right? Slacker, A, B, and C before you can
all
siege
3
the
of
gates.
them. Correct.
Yeah, it would be. I wonder if it would be better to have 3 that you could capture 2 of the points, right? Or 4 points and you can capture 3, just so there's variety in the strategies you implement based on how the defense is set up and how you want to plan your attack. Because ultimately, what I want from this is a story to tell, right? I want to be able to go into this war and actually feel like it's a big battle. It's the final culmination of this long effort we've had in putting into undermining this territory and putting it into conflict, declaring war, and finally having this battle. I want it to feel grand. I want it to feel like we can walk away and say, oh my gosh, the strategy worked perfectly, or we had to adapt during the battle. That final push that Slacker made with his group onto the left gate was just awesome because that won us the battle. Something like that, because I don't want it to, like Ruko said, to end up becoming the same thing over and over. We all have to buy repeaters because repeaters are the best siege weapon. Anything else sucks, right? Go repeaters and go ham on one gate, and whatever the strategy is. I just hope there's variety. I hope it feels like it's different every time based on the tactics employed by the specific company you're going up against. I want there to be stories coming out of this, and I do have concerns that with it being a 30-minute instance PvP session, being the culmination, right, of this war. I hope that it doesn't feel like a battleground. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that what we have to remember is this is the most vanilla that this territory war is ever going to be, because it is the focal point of New World. It is the big selling point, I think, that they have going for them. And there's a lot that they can do with this. I mean, even the landscape around the fort is the exact same. You can take your company out before the war ever happens and scout out the land and say, hey, there's this big ridge over here. What we're going to do is we're going to sneak up a bunch of stuff behind this ridge and pop up. And you can even practice this stuff out. So I'd love to see some sort of interaction with the land around it. Maybe you could build out your fort a little bit more how you want it. Or I know that you'll be able to, as defenders, you'll have the opportunity to do town projects to increase specific strengths of your gates, of your walls. I'm almost positive, I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive that might be Outpost Rush, and we'll dive into that here in just a minute. But I agree, I want to see that story unfold. I want to see that excitement overflow, and I want you to feel like when you lose, be like, oh man, we've lost it. We've got to get it back, and I bet you we can do it. That's a good feeling to have, to wrestle for control. Because remember, you'll have set up a player home. This will be a spot you constantly are recalling to, you're doing your crafting at. You're going to make one of these settlements feel very like, this is my base of operations. This is where I like to be. And I want to make sure that my faction's in control because we get good benefits when we're in control, even if it's not my company. So there's a sense of loyalty of wanting to make sure that you have, that your faction is leading the charge. I think it sets up for that nicely. So I guess what I'm saying is I think it will have those story elements, but as it stands right now, it has a lot of potential to grow into that.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree. I share the concern that I don't want this to be, and we'll talk about this more here in a minute. I don't want this to be World of Warcraft's Alterac Valley, where you have this really cool event where there's 2 kings and castles, and you gotta go down, you gotta capture outposts, and if you collect enough blood and you turn it in, you can make a sacrifice and summon this giant stone golem, and in reality, all that happens is people just run right by each other and go kill the other king, and whoever can kill it fastest wins.
Yeah.
It's like zero PvP happens in that battleground because that's just not the optimal way to do it.
Well, we know for sure.
I hate that.
We know for sure that there will be PvP in this instance, right?
Yeah,
but and I
it
agree.
has to be.
Right, exactly, and I agree with you that it's set up for the potential is there, and I am very excited to be doing this. Obviously, I want this game to succeed, and I want this to feel like this is the moment, right? Like this is a huge event. Hopefully, that 30 minutes will feel very impactful, and I think ultimately it's set up for success. But we'll see what happens and how the meta evolves, and how the developers can adapt to that, right? And try to make it better so that players have. But I think ultimately give more choices to the players, make an environment where there are actual strategic and important choices to make during the battle, and I think it'll be successful and fun.
What I'd love to see, just how I envision this in my mind's eye, is we're in our company. We've got 15, 20 people in Discord. The rest has just kind of been chaotic. We're not winning, and finally we decided, hey, everyone, don't respawn. Wait until everyone can be in the camp before we respawn. We're gonna go out the A door. 4 or 5 of us have weapons that we're ready to use, or siege weapons. Make sure, let's pick up one cannon, 3 repeaters to clear the ground, and we're going to make a bum rush right now. And boom, and everyone runs out. And imagine being the defender and looking out there and seeing just a sudden rush of all these people going to the right side and be like, they're going for A. And everyone's like trying to, you've already set down your siege equipment. So like you weren't expecting this sudden rush, and they've put down their siege. I can just see how exciting that would be to see this ebb and flow and this push and pull. Yeah. But when things go into practice, it's always very different. But man, the potential is there, and we're gonna find out what that potential is like.
I hope to see some cool strategies being pulled out of the hats of smart players. I really do. I hope if I were to lose to a smart company that actually employs really good tactical decisions during the battle, I'd be like, you know what, you deserve this territory. Yeah. At that point. But I'd be happy with that. I don't want to lose, just because they played the meta, Yep. Anyway, but that's just me, and that's another topic, I guess, for another time.
Well, let's move down to the second instance PvP combat, because territory wars will not be happening all the time. In fact, when you open up your map, you'll be able to see on the right-hand side when different invasions and wars will be happening around you and in Aeternum, so you could go and sign up for those. But mind you that those, you'll maybe be doing 1 or 2 of these a week or so. These are not constantly done. So it's like, I'm really wanting some of that combat because it's such a cool system. Well, they've created what's called Outpost Rush. Outpost Rush is a PvPvE endgame 20 versus 20 battle where teams must coordinate and balance their time gathering resources, building up their outposts, capturing objectives, and defeating the enemy players. So the level 60 players can jump into Outpost Rush. You can jump in by yourself or in a group of up to 5 players. And okay, so here's what you do. 1, you collect resources as soon as the game begins. Boom, and it's whoever can score the most amount of points in a set amount of time, right? So capturing, there are 3 different command posts, and you'll start with 1, and the enemy will start with 1, and there's 1 in the middle. You have yours. You can start gathering resources to upgrade and defend your outpost. We're talking gates, siege equipments, protection wards, which is like respawn availability, command posts, which are buffs. So you go out there, you start using your crafting skills and bring them back to base, start improving your base to make it harder for the enemy to capture. 2, there's going to be a summoning circles that you could use to bring powerful creatures onto your side. You go up to the summoning circles and you can summon a bear, or you can summon a thing of the corrupted, or not the corrupted. We're going to talk about them in a second. But you summon those, and they're going to start pushing your lane, very much like a League of Legends.
Like
yeah, thank you, a MOBA. Yeah. But we are the minions, right? And then, so you have these summoning circles. They can summon creatures that the opponents will have to kill in order to get there. You collect Azoth essence, and you can make an offering at a corrupted portal. If you do that, you're going to get like a big buff. You'll get powerful advantages. And finally, periodically, the Baroness Hane will appear, and she's this ghostly lost individual who's kind of like a boss. If you kill her, you're granted a powerful buff, and you freeze the enemy score. So you might need this. You say, oh my gosh, they're just about to win. You kill Baron, just like you would in other popular MOBAs, and suddenly the tide turns in your favor.
Baroness.
Excuse me, Baroness. Which I think is really cool. So this is kind of this tug of war. You're scoring points based on how much territory you've gained, and it's all about balancing your time on what you need to do to push your victory. Now, one other cool aspect, or not cool aspect, however you see it, fact about Baroness is that the person who gains that powerful buff or freezes the enemy score is the last hit that killed it. So when you take down Baroness, you've got to guard your own people and make sure someone doesn't sneak up in the bushes, and you have a sniper with a musket who pops off the last shot and suddenly steals it for the other team, which I think would be,
sounds a lot like League of Legends. It sounds a lot.
It does. This specific mechanic of it very much does.
Right.
But I think this allows what you were after was those story moments.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a good thing because there are a lot. There's a lot in this Outpost Rush. There's a lot going on in this battleground, and I like that. Again, there's options available. The questions I have is: do you have to do a little bit of everything? Do you have to do a little collecting resources and upgrading stuff, or can you focus on one thing and maybe surprise the enemy because you focus it so hard you win? But to clarify real quick, Slacker, you're accumulating points as you do things, right? And then it's whoever can reach the most points first wins, right? Or the cap first. Isn't that how this is played? Okay.
And by controlling these each one starts by controlling one outpost, and those are going to tick you points. And there's one unclaimed one in the middle. So if you can control the middle outpost, you will win because you've got 2 out of 3.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I think it sounds great. I think I like that there's a lot going into it. There's PvE elements and PvP elements. The only 2 questions I have is, 1, how long is this supposed to last? And 2, what is the purpose of it? Only just a fun PvP mode that you can play occasionally, or is there actual in-game consequences for doing an Outpost Rush? And those are my 2 questions I would have.
There are in-game consequences between the Outpost Rush. The more you win by, the bigger the payout of your reward.
You get money.
If it is, you're going to get a reward. I'm trying to see if I can find out exactly what that reward is. That may be something that they're kind of keeping under their hat until beta releases. So we'll find out exactly what it's rewarding. My assumption would be money, Azoth, and maybe even highly valuable crafting materials that you could sell. That would be my assumption. Very few things in the game are going to be awarding gear. Yes, you will get gear from some things, but your main source of gear is going to be crafted by players, and we'll get more into that next episode when we talk more about the economic system.
Well, I'm really excited for this game mode. This is right up my alley. I generally like PvE game modes, though a lot of them don't pan out particularly well. This one sounds great. It sounds really well thought out of. I think what I think people are going to enjoy is they don't necessarily have to do the PvE stuff within the game to win. If you're really good at PvP, you can win this game mode by just outplaying the other company in PvP. That's usually one of the big complaints about some of these game modes is, the only viable way to win is to go do the PvE objectives as well as engage in the PvP. And that's a fair assessment, but I don't think it's going to be like this. I think you can kind of choose and react to what the team is doing and not necessarily have to do just PvP or just PvE in order to win this game mode. So I'm hoping it's fast-paced. I like these fast-paced game modes, and I hope, like BigPapa was talking about, I hope the time is not overly long, but it's enough to create some tension, and you have enough time to revolve around some strategies. So.
Well, and more importantly for me too is I want this to matter in game. And I don't know if I just had an idea, and it would be sick if this Outpost Rush is something you could, let's say you have an enemy company undermining you, right, and trying to put you in conflict in your territory. So you propose an Outpost Rush, right? Or you say, okay, we're going to do an Outpost Rush with this company. They can choose to accept or decline. If they decline, they lose some of their influence towards undermining it. But if they accept, you go into this Outpost Rush, and then whoever the winner is will either take back influence, or will gain more influence towards either defending it or undermining it. That would be sick. And maybe that's one way you can, as a company, defend your territory, is say, okay, this company has the most influence towards undermining it. We're going to declare an Outpost Rush to try to stop them a little bit. And they can decline it, but they'll lose some. They'll lose some just for declining it. And that would make sense in the real world, right? There would be outposts before you go and take the actual headquarters of the territory, right? There would be places you'd have to take strategically in a war before you can potentially take the actual prize, right? But anyway, that's just an idea. I don't know if that's reality or anything, but I think that would be a real cool way to affect the actual game with a PvP instance mode.
Yeah,
I think it'd be awesome.
It would be really, really cool. And that could be definitely part of undermining the territories. You have to win a couple Outpost Rush, and then finally you can do this big war or something like that. I know the way they have it set up, it's not like that. It's just instance PvP battleground type thing. But I think this is the only other instance PvP battleground they have other than the war.
Right.
And
yes.
so I'm hoping it provides enough, or it's fun enough that people won't get bored doing it. Right. I think this is coming back to how you keep people engaged once they're max level. People will do this game mode a few times, and hopefully once they've done it, they're not just saying, okay, well, I'm done with this.
Right.
Now what do I do?
I agree.
Right.
That's why you need real world consequences for it, and that's why that's the most important thing to me is I want this to matter so I see it being done more often, because it sounds fun, but ultimately, like, I rarely do battlegrounds when I play World of Warcraft, just because I love doing them, but there's not a lot of consequence that really, like, nothing meaningful really happens.
It's
at
just
the
a
end
reward.
of it. It's just a
grind
reward.
for you. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't want this to end up being just a reward. It sounds fun, and it sounds like it would be a blast to play, but there's a lot of other games that do this, like League of Legends, something similar. Obviously, a different type of game. But it's that same kind of PvP VE, because you have the jungle and the different buffs you can get, and you could argue that it's because they only focus on that. It might be done better than in an MMO, right? But if this matters in game, if this has real world consequences in your territory, for doing this, then I could see it being played all the time, and I would love that.
Well, allow me to play devil's advocate for just a second. At the same time, I agree with you. I think that would be the best way to implement it. At the same time, I'm okay having something that just kind of breaks up my day. Something I like, I kind of don't want to go grinding out my crafting that I'm trying to get done today. I'm going to go do an Outpost Rush.
We'll do
and
both.
have it be
do
something
both
that
ways.
I can just enjoy on the side.
Yeah.
Sure, but what I'm saying is like I'm okay having some sort of mini game on the side where I can just play my character. I can enjoy the rewards that I've had,
Fair
and
enough.
not worry about it being like a rated PvP system or something where if I do, I'm going to hurt my people. Just something I can
Right.
enjoy.
Well,
in a sense.
I guess what
There's certainly a balance there.
to clarify, I would say that should have that purpose in addition to being, oh, I just want to sign up for an Outpost Rush. I don't, not a specific territory one, right? And this is all obviously just an idea, but
Yeah.
I would say you should have the option to queue up for one, or do it with consequences. It would give it more meaning, in my opinion.
All I'm hearing is Slacker's afraid of rated PvP. So,
Rated PvP is one of my favorites, dude. I love rated PvP. Rarely do I find someone who is also max level who wants to do rated PvP. I always find BigPapa who's willing to do rated PvP, but he's never max level.
Ouch. Ouch.
Low blows. Okay, all right, moving right along. Let's talk about our next segment here, a little bit more about our lore. I wanted to dive into before we get into beta, I wanted to talk about an essence that is throughout Aeternum and really gives it a lot of what makes Aeternum so special. So Azoth is a mineral that runs below the earth, which has this really magical archaic properties. Arcanic properties. I think that's the word I'm looking for. And it amplifies things. So you can see this in one of the trailers. It's in this blue vial. And this guy like tips a drop of Azoth onto a candle, and the candle like burns extra bright. So what it does is, whether you're good or whether you're bad, it amplifies those qualities quite intensely. Now this has the power to change things, to make them more beautiful, and even to make them more deadly. And so everyone who kind of comes across this resource sees it differently. Some see it as the fountain of youth, the philosopher's stone. Some see it as the embodiment of God, like the covenant, or they may even consider it to be of the devil. Regardless, meanwhile, while this is happening and we're trying to discover the secrets of what Azoth really is and the effects that it has in the world around us, the corruption is amassing huge armies in the north. Very much a Game of Thrones situation here, right? Where the Night Walker is up in the north and he's building his army and they're growing massively more and more every day. We're having that same effect. And their influence is beginning to trickle down south, which is where we've set up shop. The players, us, we've become stranded on Aeternum, or maybe we found it on purpose. Maybe we're here by accident. But regardless, we're trying to set up a home here and build a life for ourselves in Aeternum. But the forces of corruption have a very particular idea of how the power of Aeternum is to be used. And because of this, they continue to evade further and further south. And our biggest concern is that should the corrupted overcome all of Aeternum, it would seep back into the old world and corrupt it as well. So we are kind of this last bastion between the corrupted and the end of the world, and this influence called Azoth. So it leads me into kind of questioning a couple of things. So the questions I have just off the bat is, what could be the possible relationship between Azoth and the corrupted? If Azoth is something that magically amplifies things, who's to say that there's not something evil that's being amplified and has created all this corruption? I think that's something that could happen.
well, I'm sure there absolutely is. So, and I'm sure we're going to encounter that in some of these PvE content, some of these stuff that's been amplified by Azoth. So,
certainly the
at
way
least
it
for evil,
feels.
My
It's
thoughts
hard to
are
connect the dots behind the scene, yeah.
my thoughts are that the corrupted is Azoth, right? Like, it's just corrupted, that in the name, right? I wonder if they're just using it for more nefarious purposes, and then it manifests as, you have these corrupted. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it could be like that. I think my biggest question right now is, why are we not being adversely affected by it compared to a lot of the stuff we find in the world? Everything from from the animals to the land itself is being corrupted by this, but how are we able to withstand that, and why? what makes us special, I guess, and how we're able to resist it.
Okay, if we think about some of the lore that we've seen thus far, I think that we might be able to pinpoint some of those answers. Because in the trailer, we see that these Roman legions get there and they're trying to touch this gem. And once they've touched that gem that Isabella is now wearing, they become corrupted. Mm-hmm. Certainly there's some contact point that when you hit it, you're gone. You're a goner. I think that there's that corruption is less like like the power of the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, how it subtly corrupts you and then over time you're gone, and more of a plague situation where you're trying to keep it at bay, you're trying to keep it away, but if you catch it, you're toast. I think that's what it might be.
Yeah. That seems to be based on what we've seen in the trailers and some of the videos so far. That seems to be the case. I wonder if it depends on the actual intent of the person touching it or using it, right? It seems like when you become corrupted, you kind of become mindless. You're not. You kind of become almost like a drone. It looks like, but Isabella, on the other hand, seems fully functional. She looks like she's corrupted, and she seems like she's fully coherent and knowledgeable of what her actions are. So I wonder how it affects the user, and then I wonder if it depends on the heart or the intent of the person that's touching it, or that comes into contact with it.
And more so is maybe it's even not even what's touching the corrupted, but what's touching the Azoth, because you even have this whole other faction, sort of Angry Earth, that is I think obviously amplified by the power of Azoth. So, for example, we talked about seeing that stone bear in the trailer, and the stag that's huge. And those, I think, from what I've discerned so far, must be affected by Azoth, and they've been amplified in that capacity, while corruption's been amplified in its own capacity. I think to find more about that, we've got to delve into the Shattered Mountain.
Yeah. Let me just say, I really like the idea they went for here with Azoth being a substance that amplifies, and I think that's a really cool idea. I can't think of anything that kind of does the same thing in any other IP that off the top of my head. So I just wanted to make that note here. I like the idea of something that amplifies, whatever that means, whether for good or bad. It amplifies, makes that its source stronger. Like making a candle burn brighter. I think that's a really cool idea.
So to build on this, I have a theory, right? And I think my theory is kind of obvious, but I'm just going to say it anyway. And so this is not coming from any of the gameplay that I've partook in, but just out of my own mind. Here's what I think has happened. I think that Azoth is something that was contained and managed by this group of people called the Ancients. And we've seen remnants of the Ancient throughout all of Aeternum. And you see their statues and their architecture in all the trailers, in the deep dives. They're really kind of place where everyone's kind of wondering, what were they? What happened to them? And my assumption, and maybe this is just the easy answer, but my assumption is that they lost control of the corrupted. And the corrupted broke free of their grasp, or they just went away, and then nothing was able to contain the corrupted anymore. Azoth and the Ancients and the corrupted are all intertwined, and I think that the Ancients could have been wardens against the corruption with Azoth, using Azoth, but now have fallen, and we're dealing with the fallout of missing Ancients. Maybe I'm wrong, because I'm thinking of the trailer, and on that trailer, you have this Ancient statue, and he's face up, and the stone's all brand new, and you see the stag and the bear, and over time it does this quick montage, and this statue becomes absolutely decayed and destroyed on its side, and that's when the Roman soldiers show up, and they grab the gem out of the forehead of this ancient statue and become corrupted. There's some sort of warding happening here that has been broken, and we may need to replace or fix or mitigate somehow.
Yeah, that absolutely could be the case, and if that is the case, the questions would be, how do we do that? I feel like we know so little about it, or at least going into the world, because it's literally called New World. We don't have a ton of information about this. This is going to take some time to figure out how we can drive back the corrupted or keep it at bay effectively, and maybe uncovering some of the secrets from the ancients, if your theory is correct, could be the key to doing that.
Yeah, and they're the ones that built the machine that is the island of Aeternum.
It's not a machine, it's a turtle.
No.
There's still one driving it as we speak.
I think that what I really like about the lore is that it kind of gives me a zombie apocalypse feel, where if the nature doesn't kill you, the other cohabitants will. Right? If the world of Aeternum doesn't kill you, the other players will kill you. And I like that. That's like danger on every front.
Yeah.
You're really trying to safeguard yourself and your people. But the reality is, while you're trying to fight off this corruption, the biggest enemy is your next door neighbor.
It would
and
feel
fun.
even more so that way if it was full loot PvP. Just saying.
Yes, it would. It would. And maybe we'll see some sort of return back to a more looted PvP system. But I know that it was at one point a full loot PvP, and they were like, okay, that might be a bit too punishing.
It would. Yeah. No, I still feel like there should be areas where you want to party up to go out. You want to be careful and smart, and it's risky to go out. But we'll see how that evolves over time.
It would be nice to see some sort of play like Albion Online, where specific territories have the best crafting materials, but it is full loot PvP.
Right.
But you can only get there if you're level 60. So you can't, bug people who are like level 4 and like, hey, I got lucky and I got a piece. No, you're dead. There's like a place where you could go for that. I think that's reasonable if the community at large requests it, for sure.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate here, because anyone who's played World of Warcraft on a PvP server knows it's entirely possible to just get continually camped by the same player over and over again and not be able to get anything done. And while you might still have a little bit of that in this game, in World PvP, do you really need to all add insult to injury by taking all their loot every time they come back? I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the full loot PvP systems, just because it feels like you already got bested. You don't need to have these people loot your corpse and take all your progression with them. You already got humiliated enough. That's my opinion. That's
a valid concern.
I've never,
That's why they changed it. I mean, that's why, because people were getting griefed and they were losing all this progress, that they had made. So it's a very valid concern. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm for full loot, even half loot or one loot, whatever you want to call it, some sort of punishment for. Now we're talking, of course, Slacker and I are talking about specific areas that are dangerous. So, going in, it's like the wilds in RuneScape. I don't think you guys ever played RuneScape, but it's an area. It's the only area where there's PvP, at least in classic RuneScape. And you go up there and what the moment you step in, you could get blasted and killed by someone. But how they had it work was, the deeper you went into the wilds, the larger the level gap could be between you and your would-be killer, right? So when you're in the first level, only people your level or one above or one below can attack you, or you can attack them. So and then the deeper you went,
that's interesting.
It was interesting, and that way it kept it somewhat balanced, right? But the moment you stepped in there, still you could be attacked, and it's full loot. But yeah, I'm not saying there necessarily needs to be full loot, nor should it be in the entire island full loot, but some areas that are risky, and there's more. There's reward for PvPing, and reward for being careful, and that reward being you don't lose your stuff. I would be interested in that. I would think that would be cool, and like Slacker said, it would give this feel of not only are you worried about the environment, but the players themselves, in an apocalypse.
So this also, I think it lends itself to, we can't really talk about this, I think, without talking about EVE Online, because it is a full loot PvP system. Everywhere you go, you're free game. And how EVE has evolved with that is never fly a ship that you can't afford to replace. You don't leave the docking station with your best ship and all your gear on that ship, Because if you do, you're going to lose it. And if
Yeah.
you lose it, you'll lose all your progress. So they've found a way to structure their gameplay so that the core of it, the essence of it, is that everywhere is dangerous. Be careful what you take out with you. And I think that's good.
Well, and in a crafting game, that makes sense. You should be able to, if you have the materials, craft a
and
second
EVE is
set.
very much a crafting
Well,
game.
I'm talking about
Yes.
this in New World too. In a crafting game, that would make sense. Craft a second set of your best stuff, or craft some lower tier stuff, so when you go out adventuring, you're okay if you lose them. And then you bring your best stuff to the wars and to the to the dungeons, and anyway.
Well, again, though, I mean, what's the point of having these items if you're never going to take them out, right? I mean, what
I'll
is
tell
the
you
point?
what the difference is.
I don't
Because the
I don't
point
get it. I don't
is
understand having.
Is that
Go
you
ahead.
prep those items so that when you have to go do a territory war, and a lot of stuff is on the line, you bring out your big guns.
Exactly.
You put on that high-end gear. You go get into your greatest ship. And you know what? That then becomes literally newsworthy. It becomes something that says, suddenly IGN's making a report, or Kotaku or whatever, those saying, hey, players have just lost literally billions of dollars in cash in a massive war that's just scaled. It's been amazing. He's done this multiple times because there becomes a pivotal moment where it's like, guys, this is it. Get your best gear and get out there. You don't wear your best gear to go farm some lumber.
Yeah.
You wear your best gear when you have to defend your territory. And when you have that kind of an attitude, I think that an open loot free PvP concept works, and it feels good. Unfortunately, that is not the route that New World went. They started there, but they have deviated from it.
I brought it up just because I would like to still see them reintroduce some of that back. I think I get it's a consequence of having that system that people are going to be upset because they went out and they lost their stuff and then they got ganked and corpse camped, and that's understandable. It's a valid reason to be upset. So maybe there's a balance in what areas are dangerous and what areas are not. You can unflag for PvP. I'm really interested to see, because I think they have the opportunity with this game to really make a good PvP MMORPG, a PvP focused MMORPG, and some of the best PvP focused MMOs have had that full loot aspect in some way or another, and I would like to see what they could do with it. So anyway, that's just why I brought that up.
So this pairs really well, though, with our opinion segment, and we're short on time, so we won't dive too deep into this, but I think that what we really like about the open world or the open loot system is the fact that it makes it feel very immersive, right? When we're talking about that zombie apocalypse feel where you're worried not only about the zombies, but also about the other people who are out there, it gives you that level of immersion that when I see another body up on the I see them silhouetted on top of a hill, I'm fearing for my life, and I'm like, is that dude going to come down here and try and fight me? Do I need to run, or am I going to fight this fight? What level is he? All those decisions makes that part of an immersive experience, as opposed to other more mainstream MMOs right now, where PvP is very much packaged and contained in a queuable experience that you can go do as that little mini game off to the side. And I stated earlier, hey, I'm okay with that with things like Outpost Rush. But if your game is designed around that aspect of having that immersive PvP feel, it's absolutely warranted, I feel. That open loot content, I think that's very immersive when done correctly, and I think it's great. But I think that's how, just to tie this all together, I think that's how our immersion can feel really good with PvP and not feel like when you get ganked, you're like, oh my gosh, that just reset all my progress. I hate this game because I keep getting ganked. I can't make any progress. No, you download this game and you bought it on the premise that around every corner was going to be danger and that you were going to go out some days and you were going to kill some poor soul and take all of his good and make out like a bandit. And on other days, you were going to be the perpetrator like you do in Sea of Thieves, right? So,
well, and I was going to bring up Sea of Thieves because I love Sea of Thieves model. I have no issues with the way that game works, where you die, you lose all your loot, someone else takes it. The thing is, there's not real progress to be made in that game. I'm not getting upgraded weapons or armor or things like that in the game. It's just treasure that I'm going to turn in for money, and the money is really only used for cosmetics. So you might lose a session's worth of loot, which is definitely frustrating, and that's fine. It teaches you a lesson. But I feel like if you really earn something in an MMO, something that's really hard to get and obtain, you should not be able to lose it so easily as I'm going out doing a quest and I got ganked by 3 people. There was no way I was going to survive. Type
I think it's a fair counter argument. Yeah.
Right. I mean that would suck. The thing with the full loot system is, like, you see this all the time in World PvP in World of Warcraft. There's often no honor in what happens in the World PvP, and that's fine. I'm fine getting ganked by 2 people. This happened to me just the other day in World of Warcraft. I was fighting this rogue, and I thought I was winning, and then suddenly a second rogue pops up. Chain stuns me and I'm dead. Right? Right? That would feel terrible if I'm having a 1v1 with somebody and then I feel like I'm winning, I'm gonna do it, and then another person comes out of the blue, kills me, and then suddenly I've lost because you don't have to respect a duel in the open world and things like that. There's just no honor. I don't know. I'd be fine to. With a system more like Sea of Thieves, maybe they put something in where you can go out and you're in this PvP zone gathering stuff, and if you die, you lose all the stuff you've gathered or whatever, something you might need to craft a more powerful item. But I feel like once you've put in the effort to get this really big exclusive item, you shouldn't be able to just go gank somebody and take it away from them. That's just my thoughts in an RPG setting, at least. So
yeah,
I've never liked that
wrong.
system, and I love. Okay, fine, wrong. Yeah, I love World PvP. I'm going to be playing World PvP all the time. I think where we talked a little bit about between instance and World PvP. I'm all for World PvP. That's where my PvP stories come from. The instance PvP, yeah, those can be great too, but I've never had a huge story to tell from a Sea of Thieves instance PvP. They do have an instance PvP mode that you queue up for and stuff, but all the good stories I have from that game are from the World PvP and these natural experiences that you have with the other players in the game. One
of my favorite guild names I ever saw in World of Warcraft was "and 2 stealth rogues." so say your name and then "and 2 stealth rogues." That reminded me of that when you told your little rogue story there.
Oh yeah, I was infuriated.
So
I'm
here's
good
the question,
with it. I have no issue. Yeah.
Here's the question then, right? Because we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Specifically, what makes good PvP in an MMO, right? Because games can do it, right? There's great PvP in League of Legends. There's great PvP in Sea of Thieves. They're built around that. But in an MMO, where it's a game that's more like a hobby, right? It becomes a hobby, something you really invest your time into.
That's a good way to put that. Yeah.
Right. How do you do good PvP, meaningful PvP, immersive PvP in an MMO? What are the key? Like, think about the best examples of MMOs where you've had the most fun in PvP. What is the key? What are the things that you guys have seen that makes it meaningful or fun or good? However you want to put it.
For me, it's never been about how the combat works or the graphics or the world around me. It's always been, is it an immersive part of the game? Is it an afterthought? Is it something that's kind of been tacked on as and there's some PvP that you can go do a duel with? Meh, I'm not as interested. It's as soon as it gives me that zombie apocalyptic feel. It's as soon as that game gives me a sense of dread and excitement every time I see another player over there. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm really excited for New World's combat. Don't get me wrong, but the combat is a bonus on top of the fear that person is going to kill me, and I'm trying to do these PvP tests to take over territory. I got to call my buddies in, and they're going to help me with it. So I think it's what defines great PvP gameplay is how integral it is and how central it is to the design of the game as a whole. And I think that bleeds into a lot of aspects of gameplay and development. But I feel like I can always tell when the developers were like, gameplay is or PvP is a pillar of gameplay in our MMO versus PvP is a side activity that you can do in our MMO. I feel like I can always tell the difference, and every time I'm always disappointed in the PvP when it's always just that side game.
Yeah, I don't think that you can't have meaningful experience in instance or side game PvP stuff. That you absolutely can, and I think New World is in a great position to have that with Wars and with Outpost Rush. I think both of those game modes sound great. But I honestly, I know you're worried about having PvP feel like it's tacked on at the end of the day. I don't have a big issue with that because I feel like that players creating their own experiences with other players is really where all of the that's where all the really fun experiences with. And now you can pin them up against each other, but in Outpost Rush and Wars, you have these set objectives where people are going to be fighting each other, and it's not just this freeform thing. I really enjoyed. This was just a few weeks ago. We were playing World of Warcraft Classic, and we were in a zone, and we killed this guy, and then suddenly he shows up with 2 other guys to come kill us back. So we grab another guy and we go kill them, and then they come back with another guy and kill us, and then suddenly we're forming this entire raid group to go around killing these people who kept killing us, and it escalates in the zone, and then the zone starts talking about it, your server starts talking about it, and you create these memorable stories on a server that you just can't necessarily always get out of an instance PvP. So I'm still on board for open world PvP is my favorite, and I think it's going to work out great in New World.
Yeah, I would just say I think the best PvP is in an MMO is something that's seamless, that kind of fits seamlessly into the world around it. And that's why I think with the direction some of these newer MMOs are going, where you can actually control in-game territory and lose it and fight over it, I think that's a great direction. And I think, when you have crafting that actually matters and you're trying to make the next best thing, losing that sucks, but it's part of the experience of, there's danger around every corner. I have to be prepared when I go out, when I leave the safety of the territory or the safety of the city, whatever. I think, those kind of aspects are great. That's why Eve has been, still is, the best PvP MMO out there, and it has been for a long time, just because of that, the player-driven economy and the player-driven the PvP with full loot. Anyway, I think the best PvP comes from the actual, when it matters in game, when what you do has a consequence, whether on a large scale with territories or on a small scale with your own loot. Maybe full loot isn't the best thing for New World, and obviously they took that direction. But I hope there is still some reward for flagging as PvP. I hope there's good reason to do it in game or while you're leveling up, so we have more experiences like that with open world PvP, because I really want to see that as much as possible in this game. And the last comment I'll say is if they want the player base that they're shooting for, they have to introduce good PvE. And so with the introduction of PvE, I think, and the dungeons, I think that's it's a great thing. I just don't want them to lose the focus on how it originally started with that emphasis on PvP, because I think that's what really will make this game a lot of fun to play for a long time.
I agree. Okay, and I think that's a great place for us to wrap up this episode. That's a good way to tie it up in a bow. There's still a ton for us to talk about. We want to talk about what's been buzzing around the community. Stagger was a core mechanic in the game where people would get knocked back after getting hit from an attack. And the community, some people are voting, hey, bring it back. And they're saying, no, leave it gone because it was terrible. Once we've had a chance to get into the game, it'll be really interesting to see what our thoughts are on whether it should or should not be there. And we also want to talk about in our next episode what features surprised us, what features we think are lackluster, what's our first impressions. So stick with us. There's a lot to come in the episodes to come. We're super excited for beta. We'll talk a bit more next week also on the economic system and what gathering feels like and how that's all playing a role. And remember, if you want to be involved with us and you want to come play with us and you want to be in the company and on the server that we're playing on, join our Discord and you can catch all that information there. Once again, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We really have enjoyed the growth that we've seen in this podcast. We've had a fantastic community being built out of it. We couldn't do this without you guys. We really appreciate it. So a big thank you from me, Slacker, and from my co-hosts, BigPapa.
Thank you.
And Ruko.
Bye, everyone.
You guys have a great week. We will see you on the beta. Y'all take care.